Anyone wants to start? Please.
Thank you very much to both presenters. Both presentations touch on the issue of climate change. The agroecological criteria or principles are often held up as being both adaptive and mitigative of climate change. And Alistair's presentation touched at several points on greenhouse gas emissions. My reflection is that the VCA4D methodology allows a space for talking about the impact of value chains on the climate through the component of the environmental analysis that touches on greenhouse gas emissions, but doesn't really give a space for the impact of climate change on the value chain or the resilience of the value chain to those impacts. So I wonder whether either of the presenters or others think that the methodology itself, or at least the format, could be tweaked in order to foreground the issue of impacts of climate change on the value chain, actual and potential, possible adaptations and possible resilience or adaptive capacity factors. Thanks very much.
So, please. And maybe you can introduce yourself. Yeah.
My name is Ricardo Villani. I come from the University of Pisa, actually, Escuela Superior Sant'Anna of Advanced Studies in Pisa. Well, my research for the last 20 years around was about value chain analysis in terms of environmental analysis of food chains and agricultural chains in general. Yes, that's that point is extremely interesting because we normally, for example, when it comes to global warming, well, the term itself defines itself. It's a global, but of course we do have some local effect of the global warming potential within human activity. So how to actually try to measure that in terms of well, how the carrying capacity of a given territory or environment, how much is that carrying capacity? Well, that's another task. It's not actually, it's not actually considered within the life cycle assessment methods, but we can have a grasp of it in general terms. For example, well, when it comes, for example, to the effects of forest degradation or even worse, deforestation, that is a sort of phenomenon that populations might not really realize what it's leading to, not until it's late and these resources are gone, and then populations realize, well, we needed that. That had an effect on our everyday life, and regardless of maybe the climate change effect of deforestation, you do have some very local effect.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think you covered it quite well. Is there another question in the public?
I don't know if I can speak French. I would be more precise in my question. If not, I'll do the effort to try to formulate the question in English. It's better. Okay. I've been working on 3 value chains analysis on social components of the studies. And in the 3 countries, we observed that the producers are getting older and the young people disappear from the countryside. In which measure do you think that the development of more sustainable value chains in terms of environment can contribute to more inclusiveness for young people along the value chains you analyzed?
Anyone wants to start? Richard?
Yeah, please. Yeah, that's a very good question. Perhaps one point I'd make first is that although young people do leave rural areas for a range of reasons, not just economic, but also because life in the village could be a bit boring. So they're looking for a bit more excitement. Often, if not very frequently, they will go back to the village. So although they leave, they do go back. So it's not necessarily a permanent out migration. But in terms of the attraction of the value chain, the 2 I looked at, vanilla and coastal fisheries, vanilla Papua New Guinea and coastal fisheries Tanzania, in both cases, youth were very attracted to those value chains. In vanilla, it was during a massive boom period. So as long as they had access to land, they were growing vanilla very, very enthusiastically. And for the fisheries, coastal Tanzania, because of partly climate change, your issue, John, because of the climate problems along the coast, as with other factors, land availability, a lot of young people are going into fisheries values chains, both as fishers, but also if you pack the dagar, the small sardine-like dried fish, into very large bags, you have to pack them in and then stand on it and pack it. You can make a lot of money. So there's money to be made in these value chains, the 2 I looked at. So that's my direct experience. Yeah.
And Antoine, or should we take a question from the virtual public?
Yes, well, one question I think is for the latest presentation is about the process of strengthening social capitals. What kind of lessons can we draw from the different studies you have reviewed in terms of means to strengthen these social capitals, as formal or informal mechanisms to do so?
Thank you. I must say, it's quite difficult to draw a lot of information on that, because very often the studies are quite limited in how they elaborate what's actually going on. But some of the themes that are coming out, for example, is that many of the cooperative organizations, the grassroots cooperatives that we looked at in the cropping system I described, then they're more like conduits for governments to send subsidies, or if it's the private sector, they're kind of just aggregating points, if you like, for produce. So the initial impact is very low. But in cases, and I'm thinking, when I've been in the field talking to people, in cases where you've got a very well trusted person who can coordinate locally with farmers, and they kind of get some sort of status and trust, they also get the trust of the companies, then you do start seeing positive things happening. And, for example, they said, well, you're supposed to pay your credit back this year. Because it's been a bad year, we'll defer the payments. We won't charge you interest, for another year. To me, that speaks of somebody who's got a longer term view they're building up a relationship. So those sort of conditions and private companies that are able to work like that, to have the long view, I think that's where it's actually quite difficult when the public sector goes in and tries to sort of plant or build social capital through government intervention. It doesn't seem to work very well, anecdotally anyway. That's what I can say.
Maybe it's a matter of trust. I think we should move on.